This is New York City. A city known for its skyline, its subways, its bridges, and its sheer scale. Over 8 million people live here, and tens of millions pass through it every single year. It is one of the most connected urban regions ever built, with one of the largest public transport systems in the world and one of the most complex road networks in human history. Yet, despite all of that, New York suffers from some of the worst traffic congestion anywhere on Earth. Every day, cars crawl through streets that were never designed for this kind of pressure. Buses get trapped in the same gridlock they were meant to escape. Delivery trucks double park just to survive. Emergency vehicles slow down at the exact moments when seconds matter the most. What makes this strange is that New York is not a poorly planned city. It has subways, tunnels, expressways, and some of the most expensive infrastructure ever built. And yet, traffic here never truly improves, no matter how many lanes are added. No matter how many billions are spent, congestion always comes back. So, the real question isn't why New York has traffic. The real question is, why does New York never manage to fix it? In this video, we're going to look at how New York's traffic problem actually began, starting with the earliest layout of Manhattan itself. We'll see how decisions made more than a century ago quietly shaped the streets we use today, why highways that were meant to solve congestion ended up making it worse, and how politics, real estate, public transport, and human behavior collided into one permanent system of gridlock. We'll also look at why some solutions that work in other global cities fail in New York, why expanding roads almost always backfires, and why even massive investments struggle to create lasting change. By the end of this video, you won't just understand why New York has traffic. You'll understand why, structurally, this is a problem the city may never be able to completely escape. To understand why New York's traffic can't be fixed today, we have to go back to how the city itself began. Long before cars, buses, and traffic signals, Manhattan was shaped by geography. It is a narrow island, surrounded by rivers, with very limited space to grow outward. This single constraint would quietly control how movement worked here for centuries. In 1811, city planners introduced what later became known as the Commissioner's Plan. It placed a strict grid across almost the entire island. Straight streets running east to west, straight avenues running north to south. The goal was simple: organize land for fast growth, make navigation predictable, and divide property into neat, sellable blocks. At the time, the system worked extremely well. The grid made construction fast, it made land easy to trade, it made walking efficient, and it turned Manhattan into one of the easiest cities in the world to understand on foot. But the plan carried one major assumption. It assumed people would move mainly on foot, by horse, or by small carts. No one imagined millions of private vehicles trying to pass through the same narrow rectangles every day. As the 1800s progressed, New York grew at a speed that shocked the world. Immigrants arrived by the millions. Factories rose along the rivers. Tenements packed families into tight blocks. Movement depended almost entirely on walking, ferries, and later, streetcars. Even then, congestion was common, but it moved at human speed. By the early 1900s, New York had already locked itself into a street layout that would never be widened, never expanded, and never redesigned at a large scale. The grid was permanent, and just as the streets became frozen in place, a completely new force was about to enter the city: the automobile. When the automobile first arrived in New York in the early 20th century, it did not immediately break the city. For a brief period, movement actually became faster and more flexible. At this time, most New Yorkers still depended on public transport. The subway expanded rapidly after opening in 1904. Elevated trains covered large parts of Manhattan and the outer boroughs. Streetcars ran through dense neighborhoods. Ferries connected islands and waterfront districts. For most people, daily life did not depend on owning a private vehicle. Cars were still a luxury. Streets were shared. Traffic existed, but it did not dominate the city. New York functioned as a layered transportation system. Long-distance movement happened through rail. Local movement happened on foot, by streetcar, or by short vehicle trips. Each mode had a clear role, and none overwhelmed the rest. Even as the population crossed 7 million, the city continued to move. The ports stayed active, factories received supplies, workers reached their jobs. The system was not perfect, but it was balanced. This was the last time New York's transportation network worked as a complete ecosystem instead of competing parts. But beneath that balance, pressure was quietly building. Car ownership was rising every year. Roads designed for shared movement were slowly being claimed by private vehicles. And instead of limiting that growth, the city began to reshape itself around it. The age of highways was coming, and with it, a decision that would permanently fracture New York's relationship with traffic. By the middle of the 20th century, the automobile was no longer a luxury in America. It had become a necessity. Families were moving outward, suburbs were expanding, and cities across the country began reshaping themselves around the promise of high-speed road travel. New York chose to follow the same path. To handle the rising number of cars, the city turned to highways. Wide, fast roads meant to move large volumes of traffic without stopping for local intersections. The idea was simple. If surface streets were too slow and too crowded, traffic could be lifted above the city or pushed below it. This is where one figure began to shape New York more than almost anyone else: Robert Moses. Over several decades, Moses built bridges, tunnels, expressways, and parkways at a scale the city had never seen before. Projects like the Triborough Bridge, the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, the Cross-Bronx Expressway, and the Henry Hudson Parkway cut across the region and reshaped how millions would move. On paper, these roads were meant to solve congestion. In reality, they changed how the entire city functioned. Highways sliced through dense neighborhoods. Entire communities were displaced to make room for fast-moving traffic. Local street networks were severed. Areas that once supported walking and public transport were suddenly dominated by vehicles passing through at high speed. At the same time, these new highways made it far easier for people to live far from where they worked. Suburban growth exploded. Commuting distances increased. And with every new mile of highway built, the number of cars entering New York rose even faster. What appeared to be a solution to congestion became a system that created even more of it. The city was no longer just moving people within itself. It was now pulling traffic from the entire region into a street network that had never been designed for this level of pressure. And once this system locked into place, there was no easy way back. Once highways became the backbone of New York's movement, their effects did not stay limited to roads alone. They spread into housing, public transport, business patterns, and daily behavior. The first impact was suburban expansion. As highways made long-distance driving easier, more people began living farther from the city center. This shifted pressure outward, but it also created a massive new wave of inbound commuters every morning. Instead of reducing congestion, highways multiplied it by pulling traffic from dozens of surrounding counties into the same limited street grid. At the same time, public transport began to feel the strain. While the subway remained one of the busiest systems in the world, investment slowly tilted toward roads and private vehicles. Buses were forced to share already crowded streets with cars and trucks. As congestion increased, surface transit became slower and less reliable. Parking became another hidden crisis. Streets once shared by all users were now lined with stationary vehicles. Curb space turned into storage for private cars. Double parking became routine. Deliveries blocked lanes. Bike movement was squeezed into shrinking gaps. Every parked vehicle removed part of the road's moving capacity. Even emergency response was affected. Fire trucks, ambulances, and police vehicles found themselves trapped behind ordinary traffic. The faster the city tried to move, the more it slowed its own life-saving systems. Then came induced demand. Every time a road was widened, traffic briefly improved. But within months, the space filled again. New drivers adjusted their habits. Longer commutes felt acceptable. More people chose cars over trains. What looked like relief was only temporary. The system entered a loop. More roads created more driving. More driving created more traffic. More traffic justified more roads. And New York, locked into its fixed street grid, had nowhere left to expand. Today, traffic is no longer an occasional problem in New York. It is a permanent condition of daily life. In Manhattan, average car speeds during peak hours often drop to walking pace. In Midtown and Lower Manhattan, vehicles regularly move slower than a person on foot. Crosstown trips that should take 10 minutes can stretch into 40. Even short bridge crossings can turn into half-hour waits. For commuters, this means planning life around uncertainty. Leaving early does not guarantee arriving on time. A single blocked intersection, a delivery truck, or a minor accident can freeze entire corridors without warning. Many workers add extra time to every trip, not because the distance is long, but because the system itself is unpredictable. For buses, the situation is worse. They share the same congested streets as private cars and must stop frequently for passengers. This makes buses one of the slowest ways to move short distances inside Manhattan, despite being designed as an alternative to driving. For businesses, congestion directly affects survival. Deliveries arrive late. Service vehicles struggle to reach customers. Ride-hailing cars circle blocks endlessly looking for brief gaps to stop. Every delay adds cost, and those costs quietly flow into food prices, service fees, and rent. For emergency services, the stakes are highest. Fire engines and ambulances lose crucial seconds navigating streets already filled to their limits. Even with sirens and lights, there are moments when there is simply nowhere for traffic to move. And yet, despite all of this, driving in New York continues to increase. People still choose cars because they feel more flexible than slow buses. Suburban commuters depend on highways because rail links remain incomplete or overcrowded. Tourists use taxis because the city still encourages car access in many dense zones. Traffic is no longer just movement. It has become a background force that shapes work, health, housing, business, and even how the city breathes. At first glance, New York's traffic seems like a problem that money should be able to solve. The city is wealthy, the state is powerful. The country has built massive transport systems before, yet congestion here remains untouched at its core. The first limit is space. New York is built on islands and narrow land corridors. Manhattan is only a few kilometers wide. The Hudson and East Rivers block outward expansion. Every bridge and tunnel already operates near capacity. Unlike newer cities, New York cannot simply add parallel routes without demolishing large parts of itself. The second limit is the street grid. Most of Manhattan's streets were fixed more than 2 centuries ago. The blocks are short, intersections are frequent. This makes the city highly walkable, but it also forces vehicles to stop constantly. There is no smooth, uninterrupted flow for cars across long distances. The physical layout itself works against fast road movement. The third limit is cost. Any major change in New York is not just expensive, it is historically expensive. Digging tunnels, relocating utilities, reinforcing foundations, and protecting surrounding buildings push even small projects into the billions. With rising costs come delays, lawsuits, and shrinking political support. The fourth limit is politics. New York's transport system is controlled by multiple overlapping agencies, city departments, state authorities, and regional boards. Even simple changes must pass through years of approvals, budget fights, and public opposition. By the time one plan moves forward, conditions on the ground have already shifted. The fifth limit is behavior. Traffic is not just an engineering problem, it is a human one. People choose cars for comfort, privacy, and flexibility. As long as driving feels like the easiest option for some portion of the population, congestion refills every new piece of road space almost immediately. And finally, there is the paradox. New York depends on cars for goods, services, construction, and emergency response. But the more it accommodates cars, the more its streets collapse under the pressure. The city is trapped between what it needs and what it cannot physically support. Over the years, New York has tried many ways to fight congestion. Bus lanes gave public transport its own space. Bike lanes spread across large parts of the city. Pedestrian plazas replaced traffic at key intersections. Traffic signals became smarter. Ride-hailing promised fewer private cars. Congestion pricing was proposed to reduce unnecessary driving. Each of these efforts worked in small pockets, but none of them changed the core system. When buses improved, some drivers shifted to them, but others quickly took their place on the road. When bike lanes expanded, short trips moved off the streets, but long-distance driving stayed the same. Ride-hailing reduced car ownership for some, but it also added thousands of circulating vehicles searching for passengers. Congestion pricing, which could have reshaped behavior, faced political resistance, delays, and pushback from commuters and businesses. The idea that promised the biggest impact struggled to move beyond debate. What these small wins reveal is simple. New York's traffic system is too large and too interconnected for quick fixes. Each solution shifts pressure instead of removing it. Progress happens. Relief does not. New York's traffic does not exist because the city failed to invest. It exists because the city succeeded too early, then tried to force a car-based system onto a design never meant to support it. The grid that once made Manhattan efficient for walking became a trap for cars. Highways that promised freedom slowly filled every available gap with demand, and every attempt to relieve congestion ended up reshaping it instead of removing it. This is why New York can improve traffic in small ways, but can never fully fix it. The city is physically constrained, politically fragmented, economically overloaded, and behaviorally dependent on cars. New York will continue to adjust signals, expand bike lanes, upgrade subways, and test new policies. But congestion will remain. Not as a temporary failure, but as a permanent companion to one of the most complex cities ever built.